Hello, everybody. Thank you so much to Nikolai Witschl. I don't know if the pronunciation is right. I'm sorry for that.
That's okay. Nikolai Witschl. It's a bit of an odd last name because it doesn't have enough vowels for the number of syllables that it should have.
Yeah.
But I like it.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here and to discuss your role, Dr. Curdle Jr. on Riverdale season 6. And tell us a bit, what's the main element in this character and the show in general that fascinates you the most and drew you to join the show?
First off, as an actor, you rarely have too much of a choice for when you join shows. You normally need to audition to get in. I'd love to be in a lot of shows that I'm not right now, but to each their own. For me, I came to Riverdale and I come to Archie through the comics. The original Archie comics, the double digests that I would always see in grocery store aisles. And throughout my childhood, that's kind of like what I knew of Archie and the world of Archie comics. So when Riverdale came out, it seemed like it was very much like a gritty reboot of the Archie world, the world of Archie. And I thought that was kind of a pretty cool idea, especially the way that they were doing it. And by the time that I came on with my character in season 3, I'd had a couple of seasons to kind of like test the waters of what they were doing to really cater my character to that. But I really enjoy the Archie comics and the way that Riverdale turns these characters that we understand and that we know and have known since the 60s into these modern kind of gritty adaptations of it, where there's a lot more murder in Riverdale than there ever was in the original Archie comics. I think that's something that's really interesting to me, and also is something that I focused on when I was building the character of Dr. Curdle Jr., because at least from my perspective for his character, the show is a comedy where the joke is how serious everything is.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, I very much try to portray my character in that way, and that was one of the really key thrusts of when I was building him, of something that I found was really important, because Riverdale still has Archie comics as that like core of where it sprang from. The 1960s Americana comedy is still at the core of this show, and so I wanted it to be at the core of my character when I was playing it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's truly interesting for fans to know this behind the scenes of you preparing the character. And maybe some people doesn't actually think about how much work an actor puts when he tries to build a character. And this character has an amazing and huge universe besides it. And
absolutely.
Yeah. Now I'll pass the floor to Aurora, which is our Riverdale expert. And she's going to ask you some questions about the show.
A lot.
Happily. Hello.
Okay, so Dr. Curdle Jr. and Dr. Curdle before him has always been part of Riverdale and its mystery, even though they were never really involved in firsthand. And most of the time, the death code is pretty crazy.
Yes.
So do you have like a favorite moment or one that stuck with you for how absurd it was?
I mean, you've got it there. The deaths and the specific like kinds of murders that Dr. Curdle and Dr. Curdle Jr. need to deal with really do have a wild progression in how where they've come from and where they're at right now. I'm gonna say for my favorites on this, I'm not gonna choose any of the like more supernatural murders that we've kind of been getting into. I think my favorites have to be the ones when we were still in the world of more realism, where everything was mysterious and magical, but in more of a Scooby-Doo way, where you could always lift the mask off the villain and it's like, oh, that makes sense. But the one that I go back to is the character's name was Baby Teeth. And Baby Teeth had all of his teeth taken out. And I remember my character specifically says they were removed pre-mortem, which is an interesting way to say when he was alive. But not only that, but there was a matchbook hidden in his throat, a bit of a gruesome detail, which is, I think, such a noir way of thinking about it. The matchbook in the throat, like having monogrammed matchbooks from a time when people smoked much more than they do now.
Yeah. And which was the most fun scene for you to film?
That would, for me, would have to be the Josie and the Pussycats scene, where I got to be with the rest of the cast in the audience watching Josie and the Pussycats perform. That was very cool because as I mentioned, my character is funny when he is the most serious. But that was a scene where they kind of like let me off the leash a little bit, where I got to actually play into the jokes a little bit more. Betty first sees me and is like, Dr. Curdle Jr., why are you here? Did someone die? And I'm like, no. I'm a huge fan. I love Josie and the Pussycats. I really got to lean into the comedy of that.
Yeah.
And then when Tony goes into labor in the middle of the show, and they're like, "Oh, is there a doctor in the house?" I'm the doctor. The comedy in that was very clear and apparent and on the page, and I loved to play it.
And so Riverdale recently embraced its supernatural side once and for all. So what do you think about this twist? And did you see it coming or not?
Yeah, as I kind of teased a little bit earlier on, things were, for much of it, very like Scooby-Doo, where we thought it might be aliens and Mothmen and Gargoyle Kings, but you pull off the mask and it turns out it's this other thing. But at the start of season 6 with Riverdale, and certainly even getting back into Riverdale after the 5-episode event, we really are in the world of supernatural, and I personally love it. I love it because I love superheroes, but also I love it because there's precedent. There's Archie the comics, because I was thinking about this recently. We've got Marvel Comics and DC Comics were the two like big comic names when you think about comic books, but Archie really is the third, and they're the only ones that haven't like supremely embraced superheroes and superpowers. But I think that's just because of the culture of how comics came up and what they were kind of like regulated into. It's a genre, it's an entire medium. It would be like if every television show was just wrestling. And we just like decided that like, oh no, TV is for wrestling. That's where you watch wrestling. And we in the real world very smartly have opened that up to be like, no, it can be anything. And with comics, that's starting to happen now. But for such a long time, it was about superheroes, and then weirdly, Archie comics, kind of like in its own world off to the side. But with that, even Archie comics have had superheroes in it. Like Archie has become a superhero himself. I specifically remember a crossover between Archie and Marvel where it's Archie meets the Punisher. That's something that I remember from the past. And I bought a comic recently that's Betty and Veronica meet Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. So
that's cool.
It's very cool. It's written by Paul Dini. It's great. so yeah, and not only that, a lot of the other Archie stuff that's happened, like the Archie's Weird Mysteries as a cartoon, and that kind of like subgenre of where Archie has gone, as well as Josie and the Pussycats even going out into space. Like Archie has gone to these weird places before, and these absolutely surreal and unrealistic things. Not to mention, I can't believe it took me this long, but even mentioning Sabrina, which is magic. Which is now also in the Riverdale universe, completely at this point confirmed and crossed over with the world of the chilling adventures of Sabrina. So yeah, all of this supernatural stuff that is now in the world of Riverdale has precedent with the world of Archie comics, but holy moly, are they going their own way with it. And they are really moving the plot forward and the adventures these characters are going through forward with all of the supernatural work that the world is building right now with Riverdale in particular. And if you can't tell, I love it.
We can tell.
Good.
And talking about powers, everyone is slowly getting powers, like first Archie, then Betty and Jughead. So will your character have any? If so, what can you tease? Or if not, what power do you think he would have? Or what power would you like your character to have?
Very good question. I can't say whether or not I do.
Okay.
We're still actually in the middle of filming. I was on set yesterday.
Okay.
So we're still in the middle of filming and writing our episodes and filming stuff to cap off the season, which I don't want to spoil for anybody, because honestly, the best way of watching it is seeing how the writers and everyone intended. And it's such a ride that I wouldn't want to deprive anybody of that. But I can say that if Dr. Curdle Jr. did get powers, I think it has to be related to the dead, because
of course.
Absolutely. Everyone's powers kind of seem to be related to kind of the things that they deal with. In any case, Archie's super strong and super tough, and he is like the prototypical superhero of the show, even before he became invulnerable. Jughead can read minds because he's always been a thinker. His mind has always been his greatest power. Betty can see auras because she's about understanding people and tracking down mysteries. And Veronica, as we know now, is venomous because of just like her spitfire personality. I think it works so well for her. So if Dr. Curdle Jr. had powers, he would have to deal with the dead, either talking with the dead, being able to speak to his autopsies and
that would be really cool.
Be very handy too, of like, yes, how did you die? It would be like cheating in the game of Clue. But the other thing that I was thinking that might be a little bit more off to the side would be if he acted more as like a grim reaper of sorts, and passing souls from one place to another. It's a little bit more out there, but it might be an interesting thing to explore. And either way, all of these powers are kind of like shades of 6 feet under.
Okay, so you already mentioned that you are a fan of the comics. So I assume you were a fan of the show before joining the cast?
Yeah, I thought Riverdale was a really interesting concept. To take these well-beloved, very like lighthearted Americana characters and give them what is at this point the gritty reboot to end all gritty reboots. I thought the show in the first couple of seasons was really interesting in the way that they approached it, and the amount of teen drama that they added to it with all of these gorgeous teenagers. But I really I am glad that I came into the show when I did in season 3, because I got a couple of seasons to understand the tone of what they were going for, and to really use that to be able to lean into Dr. Curdle Jr., who is a bit of an intentional weirdo, who and is, I think, something that exists very nicely on the periphery of the world of Riverdale and all of the main cast. And I probably wouldn't have played the character the same way if I had started just in season 1.
Yeah. And what's your favorite season or your favorite like storyline?
Oh, I really enjoy the Gargoyle King. Particularly because I really like Dungeons and Dragons personally. Like, I've played a bunch of tabletop RPGs, and I know about that from like the Satanic Panic from the 70s, where people were like, my kids are casting spells in their basement. And how truly it is a game about community, but how through people's worst fears and lenses, it can be used for evil purposes, I guess. But I've always found Dungeons and Dragons to be a game that brings me closer together with people rather than causing me to murder them.
Yeah. Okay, so we've seen Dr. Cardle Jr. collaborating with Betty very often. So I was wondering, how is it like to work with Lily?
Oh, it's very fun. I think Lily is always a professional. The two of us, whenever we do our scenes together, we're able to, chat about things in each other's lives at this point, which is really nice to have. But also, when the camera rolls, just be able to like sink into our characters and play the scene, to give everyone what they want, so that we can move on and be able to do the show quickly and efficiently. I know many of the other cast members, like KG in particular, like are a bit more goofballs on set, which is another good energy to have. But yeah, working with Lily is strongly like friendly and professional affair, I would say.
Yeah. And talking about the environment on set, how can you describe your experience with the cast and crew while filming the series, and with whom did you grow stronger friendships?
Oh yeah, that's a lovely question. I think I always have fun on set. I'm always very respectful, because every time I'm on there, I feel like the smallest cog in the machine. It takes so many people to make television work, and everybody needs to be able to do their jobs to a high quality and standard for things to be able to move along and to work at all. So I'm always super happy when I'm there. And also because of the way that film works, you mostly only get to see people that you're in scenes with. There's not a lot of time to be able to cross over with people from other scenes, unless they were filming something previously when you get called in, or they're doing something later on. And it's always nice to be able to see them in the actor's tent. But for the most part, I've gotten more friendly with the people I've done scenes with, like Lily and Cole. Cole and I in particular talk video games pretty often.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so my questions are over. And so Chiara, if you
Yes.
have any.
Now we have a little fun question that we always ask to the people we're interviewing. And considering we're talking about Riverdale, it's on the Riverdale universe. If you could choose one character apart from Dr. Curdle Jr. that you would have loved to play, which one would it be?
Oh, well, my cheeky answer is Dr. Curdle Sr. But even with that, based on, I actually have played that character, because Riverdale is the convention, whenever they go back in time, the kids play the adults.
Yes,
so
yeah.
I have had to play my own father at one point. I'm not sure, actually. I think everyone in the cast is really well suited to their roles. And I think even for myself in particular, I fit really nicely with Dr. Curdle Jr. I definitely don't see myself as any of the kids, but maybe like Principal Weatherby. Oh, but Peter does such a good job with that part as well.
Yeah. And since we know that Riverdale was renewed for season 7 and fans already started talking about how the series might end, what can you say about it? I mean, do you have any idea about what's next for the show, or is still a bit uncertain at this point?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I personally just get called in for whatever scenes I am needed for, and I read the scripts to do my work as an actor.
Yeah.
But I'm don't have all of them, and I certainly can't read the writers' minds. My goodness. But if I had to make a wild guess, is that here we are in May 2022, and we've had 2 huge multiverse movies happen with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I don't know, in my mind, people seem to be thinking about the multiverse these days. So that's what I would love to see for Riverdale, would be some sort of multiverse. But even then, we already kind of have that with Riverdale. So
Absolutely.
they're already ahead of me.
Yeah, and that would be an interesting twist for Riverdale to deal with the multiverse, even though in some kind of ways it has already dealt with it. And also with Sabrina joining the show, it's a sort of multiverse in it as well, I think.
Yeah, that too. We're starting to make the connections.
Yeah. Absolutely. And now, if you had to give an advice to people who wants to pursue an acting career, which kind of advice would you give them?
I would say that actors can truly only speak to their own experience, and that's a matter of the place that they're in, the time that they're in, and the people that they are, as well as just the random luck that comes from any sort of gig life profession. But if I think that for actors starting out, I truly found a lot of success myself with theater. I know I'm doing a lot of film and TV now, but doing theater and improv and as many shows as possible to play as many different characters as I could, to really stretch the limits of what I feel comfortable doing as an actor, and to make strong, interesting choices that not only portray the character, but also give people that spark of interest that can kind of like make them want to know a little bit more about what's going on, because that's something that you've done a little bit of the work to think about. And I always say that film and TV is kind of like just doing a tech rehearsal, where everything comes together, because everything is so product oriented. And for learning how to do acting, doing work on the stage and being able to play scenes and play plays all the way through really does a lot of help to be able to understand what a rehearsal process is, so that if you go into film and TV, that you can do that rehearsal yourself, so that you're ready for when you got to be on camera.
Yeah, also considering how theater has this long rehearsal time in comparison to TV, it has more strict times with filming and such.
Absolutely. You need to be able to work to play the same show consistently night after night, whereas with film, you just need to get one take within a certain window of any given scene, and then you can move on. So they really are working towards different things. So knowing how you work with a process and your own rehearsal by doing theater is, I think, a super important way to be able to know yourself and to be able to get into film and TV, and to get your own process started.
Absolutely. Great answer. And that's all for us. Thank you so much, Nikolai, for joining us.
Thank
And
you for your
congratulations.
time.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
And congratulations on the amazing work you've done on the show so far. And we can't wait to see more of Dr. Curdle Jr. And let's remind people that Riverdale airs Sundays on the CW. And thank you so much again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.